It's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers, Andrew Green and Nuna Alpacha. Andrew Green is the Associate Director at the UC Berkeley Career Center, where he works with graduate students and postdocs as a career advisor. He is a Cal alum, go Bears, and has worked for over 17 years helping recent PhDs and postdocs in STEM fields, pursuing professional opportunities in the academy, private sector, and nonprofit sectors. Nuna Alpacha is a project manager for Twitter, a position she transitioned into following her role as Twitter's hospitality manager, where she managed culinary programming and events for Twitter employees. In that role, she worked directly with Twitter's philanthropy team to build an engaging program that incorporated food recovery and sustainability programs into daily operations. Currently, as Twitter's project manager, she is helping lead the company's strategic initiatives and operational excellence. BFI welcomes you both, and thank you for being here. Please welcome Andrew and Nuna.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm working here. So I've been with the Career Center now over 20 years, working with graduate students, PhDs, and postdocs, and slide is not advancing. Okay, here we go. Okay, and so let me start briefly by talking about a little bit about the difference between a CV, which especially if you're a graduate student or a postdoc, you're probably very familiar with, as opposed to a resume, because the terms are often used interchangeably. The substantive difference from my perspective is a CV is really about your output, your accomplishments, quality of your degrees, publications if you're a graduate student, projects that you've worked on. That is, what is the result of your skills and capabilities. Whereas a resume is much more function about what is inside that black box that produces the output. Because if you go to a company, you're not going to go there as a PI, you're going to go there, you're going to be putting your skills at the behest of managers, especially initially, who are going to assign you to different teams and projects. So in the resume, you want to focus on what are the technical skills, the quantitative skills, but also the often overlooked soft skills, communication, teamwork, collaboration, that are really critical to presenting yourself as an effective candidate. Now, oftentimes when I see a first draft resume, as I'm likely to see later on tonight, I see resume as biography, that is from the inside out. Here are all the things I've done, all the places I've been. I hope you read through it carefully and draw appropriate inferences. Who's going to take the time to do that these days? No one's going to take the time to do that. Just because you've done something doesn't mean it belongs on your resume. And so instead, we're going to talk about sort of a different way to think about it is, again, it's not your biography. So instead of writing it from the perspective of where have I been, what have I done, I want you to think about your resume as being in dialogue with the presumptive hiring manager. Because even in Berkeley, no one picks up a resume to go, who is this whole person I might encounter? But rather, I'm looking for A, B, and C. Show me A, B, and C. Make it easy for me to see the value that you have to offer. For you to be able to do that effectively, you first have to stop and think about, what are your sources of value? Why would I want to interview you? What is it that you have that's going to make a positive contribution to my team? Because that's the criteria that I'm using to differentiate between candidates I want to interview as opposed to those I can dispense with. The organizing principle I use for this is to think in terms of speed dating. How many of you are familiar with speed dating? I won't ask how many of you have done it. The value of speed dating in this context is that before you sit down to write that next draft of your resume for a given job, I want you to ask yourself, what are the 3 things I want the hiring manager or the HR screener to know? What are the 3 things I want them to know about me before I make that decision whether or not I'm willing to invest more time in your candidacy? more time in your resume or cover letter. Because it's only by taking a step back and thinking about what is it that speaks most strongly on my behalf for this job that you're ready to actually construct the resume. Because as I'm glancing down, as I'm reading down, and data says that'll be like between 3 and 4 seconds, at which point I'll make a decision. I'm building a narrative in my mind. Who is this person? And you want control over that narrative. So what does it mean to think about what are your sources of value? And so especially for those of you who are PhDs, the first question is, if I'm going to hire you, am I going to hire you because you spent the last 3 years working on this cell line, this protein, this particular substantive project? That is, there's a lot of overlap between the work that you're doing now and what you would do for me. Or if I'm going to hire you, is it going to be because working on this project for the last 5 years as a graduate student, you develop skills, instrumentation, software, expertise that I can now use on a range of other projects. So there's this relatively little substantive overlap, because if it's the latter case, and you spend a lot of time in your resume telling me about the content of your research or your senior honors thesis, you're not giving me useful information. So thinking seriously and hard about what is it that is your source of competitiveness helps you understand not just what is included, but what is emphasized, what is given greater prominence. So when I pick up your resume, the first thing I'm likely to notice is that you're from Berkeley. Berkeley's a powerful brand name. If the first thing I notice when I pick up your resume is not that you're from Berkeley, well, we need to talk about that as well. So when I see you're from Berkeley, my first thought is, this person's really smart. However, and this is especially true if you're a master's or PhD, my second thought is not, oh, plays well with others, has excellent communication skills, great leadership potential. One of the most socially graceful people I've ever met. And this matters. So when you're thinking about how you present yourself through your resume to get to the interview stage, you have to think about, what do I want to emphasize because it reinforces that positive sense that they have of me as a graduate from Berkeley, but also what are the more pernicious stereotypes about someone from Berkeley, especially at a graduate student level. So this is not just something that I'm pulling out that you have to, these are from job ads. Hire, develop, and lead high-performing teams. Excellent interpersonal skills. And I promise you that if you give me a resume that just speaks to your technical capabilities, as I often see, and then you have in a cover letter a line that says, able to work independently, but good team player, that's not going to cut it. It's not enough to tell them that you're a good collaborator. You have to show them. What might that look like? So here are a couple of examples, and it's unfortunate, but so these are ways in which you can sort of convey your information, researcher, and these first couple of bullets, one of which is covered, speak to your technical skills and capability. But you can also include there things like led team in the creation and implementation of new lab safety protocols. Or down below, trained and mentored. Trained and mentored undergraduates and these are ways in which you are showing that you're more than just a bundle of technical skills. And it's not advancing again. Life is what happens while you're making other plans. Okay. And also recognize that you can convey important things about you that may be difficult to do simply through your coursework, your research, by looking at activities that you've engaged in, whether you're an undergraduate as a part of a student organization. In this case, a postdoc who was on the postdoc industry exploration program, where they performed outreach as part of a 5-person board. That is, I want you to take a step back and think more broadly, what is the repertoire of activities that you've engaged in that will allow you to showcase that, in fact, you have these collaboration skills, that you have these technical skills. Now, in addition to the technical skills, you also have communication leadership, and the like that we see are mentioned prominently in job ads. As I said before, your experiences don't speak for themselves. You need to explain them. One of my favorite examples is I worked with a graduate student a few years ago in mechanical engineering. His dissertation research was on turbulence coming off the leading edge of a propeller. He was applying for jobs in financial engineering with hedge funds modeling turbulence and interest rates and exchange rates, propeller, interest rates, propellers. What do I do with that? Utilizing Monte Carlo simulations programmed in C++ to characterize large data sets, 6 to 12 terabytes, with the following stochastic. As what is that common language that bridges the specifics of what you've done and allows them to project you into the kind of role that you're applying for? So don't just tell them that you were a TA, but what is the yield to them? Expert explaining complex concepts to non-expert audiences, comfortable speaking in front of small and large audiences. There's what you've done, but then what does it represent to them? So that's about content. Now I want to switch to appearances because your audience has short attention spans. People don't read your resumes like the Rosetta Stone. They glance at them. I actually had a PhD come in, and this is the first thing that was on his resume. It's not even easy for me to see that they're from Berkeley or whether or not they're doing research that I'm kind of interested in. You take that same information and you structure it. Look at how much more prominent Berkeley is here as opposed to here. If you're someone who's a PhD student and the content of your research is something that's going to engage them with greater interest, let me see what the topic of your dissertation was. If you have an advisor who's got name brand recognition in the field, make it easy for me to see that. At the undergraduate level, this is the first draft resume of one of my son's former girlfriends. And again, it's just a bunch of information clumped there together. It's like seeming to emphasize dates. What exactly is she able to do? Where is she coming from? Similar information, but here it's much more structured. It's much more glanceable. The default for many, especially undergraduates, is to think in terms of chronological resumes. But in her case, for example, she had worked largely at Starbucks to help finance her education, but that wasn't nearly as relevant for the jobs that she was applying for in public health as some of the project work that she had done. So instead of just sticking to a strict chronological form for the resume, break it out into different substantive categories. And again, look at how nice and clear the use of bullets rather than narrative text that demands to be read rather than glanced. So summing up, in taking a CV that you might have, transforming it into an effective resume, it's a targeted, focused instrument. When I was an undergraduate, graduating in 1980, you had to type up your resume on an IBM selector, take it to a print shop because Xerox copies weren't good enough. So you had to live with one version of your resume because the minimum run was like 100 copies. So you had to live with that version for however long. These days, employers expect a customized resume that speaks to their specific needs, their A, B, and C. It reflects the job description and helps them project you into the role that you're applying for. I should be able to reverse engineer the job description by looking at your resume. And finally, it's concise, emphasizing concrete experience, skills, and accomplishments, quantified wherever possible. And finally, when you feel like you have a draft that's ready for prime time to submit through Handshake for some job, I want you to look at each line and ask two questions. First question is, what is that given bullet point? What is that given line designed to tell the reader about me? That is, what is its function? If you can't think of a reason, it doesn't belong there, and it's just taking up space. Secondly, is it phrased or framed in such a way that it actually communicates that substantive importance that you just attached to it? Because there are a lot of things that we call one thing in academia, but it's called differently in industry. And we can't expect a busy hiring manager to go, okay, when she says X, does she really mean Y? But rather you have to do that translation for them. When I graduated, it actually took a fair amount of time to apply for a job. So for any given job, there might be, say, 25 applicants, of whom, let's say, 15 were reasonably well qualified. I'll read through 15 cover letters and resumes. These days, it's so easy, click to apply, click for a job, click. I don't get 25 applicants. I get 125. And I'm not going to read through 125 close. So your job is to make it as easy as possible, once they start looking at your document, to see the value that you have to offer. And if you do that, coming from Berkeley, that will greatly increase the likelihood that what will follow is an invitation to interview. Thank you.
Let's get the video going here. Can you get the video? Can you switch to her side?
Okay.
You know, just leave it out.
Oh,
Make it easiest. Okay,
So we're both, okay, we're live again.
I think
Thank
we're
you.
ready.
Sorry about that. Cool.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Youre. My pronouns that I use are she and her. And I am super excited to be here with you all today. Some of the coolest, smartest people at Berkeley. So I feel really impressed and proud to be here. First and foremost, I just want to give a super shout out and thank you to the organizers for this event. Give everyone a applause for that. Super amazing, and I think it's awesome because it's practical, giving you real tools and resources of how you can do better and how you can get out there and maybe get jobs and really grow in your career. So super excited to be here and honored to speak with you all today. All right, so my name, as I said, is Youre. I currently work as a project manager in strategy and operations at Twitter, and I work specifically on our people experience and inclusion and diversity. I know it's a mouthful, but in this role, I help drive operational excellence, assist with strategic planning and thinking, and then also help enable the team to be able to do their jobs and also love where they work. Prior to that role, as Casey mentioned, I served as a hospitality manager for Twitter SF. And in that role, I provided operation support on the ground, food and beverage support. I would help employees get the things that they wanted during the day in terms of food, beverage, snacks, you name it. I'm sure you've heard of some of these tech companies and their fancy food cafes. But beyond that, you know, what I was super interested in doing was kind of telling the stories about where we were in California, in the Bay Area, and the neighborhoods that we were in. So San Francisco, primarily Tenderloin, and all the different people and places and food systems that existed around us. And I was really passionate about food recovery and sustainability, and created a really robust program where we could constantly give back to the community that we were in, and also, of course, inject sustainable practices from the end to end, from purchasing to consumption. So that's some of the stuff that I did at Twitter, and I would say those two roles seemingly sound different, so made a little bit of a pivot there. But I think today what I'm going to talk about is the power of the pivot and most importantly, how through storytelling and perhaps the diversity of your experiences, you can make your resume the most attractive resume possible. So when I look back at my past undergrad resumes, I did not expect to be in the role that I am in today. And I feel like my unique background and very varied experience really allowed me to stand out and actually kind of make a career of jumping from one position to the next. So I'm going to tell you my story. So I consider myself a global citizen. I've lived in over 4 countries. I can get my way around 4 languages, and I spent most of my childhood overseas. So what I specifically gained from that experience was the ability to adapt quickly, to connect with people from different backgrounds, and also to constantly challenge what I perceived as normal. So when I came back to the US to attend college at UMass Amherst, sorry, not Berkeley, I chose hospitality and tourism management, or HTM as we called it. And, you know, at the time, it wasn't a super calculated decision. I was really just thinking about what kind of went with my personality type, what I could, what was good at that school. And honestly, I was interested in food and tourism. But of course, I had other interests too. As you can imagine, I was highly involved on campus, like I'm sure some of you are here. I was involved in our campus media, entrepreneurship club, even gospel choir. Don't ask me to sing though. Not that high. So while I was a student on campus, I also worked full-time for a food cooperative. And so in this cooperative, we completely ran this business as students and did every type of work that a business takes, such as hiring, firing, inventory, accounting, marketing, bookkeeping, all the things that it takes to run a business. And I got really firsthand experience of true entrepreneurship, working with other people, solving for problems, you name it. And it was so great to be able to have it within the cooperative spirit. So on top of that job, I also worked at our campus digital media lab. So just stay with me here. So in this digital media lab, I learned how to do 3D model rendering and also learned how to use multimedia equipment, sound booths, AV technology, you name it, I was your IT guy. So clearly, all of these experiences are a little bit all over the place, and I was busy, needless to say. And within all of that, I was actually able to graduate within 3 years. Now, when I did that, I originally had plans to take a gap year. And I say this specifically because I know some of you may or may have considered taking a gap year before school, after school, in the middle of your career. And I just want to really say that, you know, if it is something for you, you should really consider it, because there's a multitude of things that you can learn, stepping away from the classroom, stepping away from research, stepping away from the workplace. So consider it if you are. So fast forward to now, hearing all of the different things that I've done, I never would have expected that I would work for a tech company today in the Bay Area, but I was somehow able to find my way there. And I think I did this by specifically pursuing opportunities that I thought would broaden my skill set, that I could add more tools to my toolkit, and that would demonstrate my passions of learning and growth and exemplify leadership skills that most jobs look for. So I would, on my resume, provide actual concrete experiences from a lot of these different places. And I would match the words that I would see in these job descriptions directly on my resume and make sure that I was telling the story with actual specific evidence tied to numbers, which is typically what people like to see, to show impact in the things that I have done. But I'm not talking about like the most cool jobs. I'm talking specifically for me, because I was in hospitality. I was polishing silverware at a hotel. I was working administration for a hospital. I was doing a lot of different jobs. But throughout all of those jobs, I was able to tell the story of how those jobs provided me with skills that employer was looking for. And so I think it's really important to take a look at the wealth of experiences that I'm sure you all have and try and creatively come up with the story of what those experiences are. What are the skills that you built? It doesn't have to come from traditional spaces. It can come from the unexpected. I think as just like you really only have 5 seconds to really capture someone. And so in that 5 seconds, you want to make sure that you are really connecting what they are looking for with your experiences, but you also want to demonstrate and show who you are, right? That is the first impression, and that is the time where you can really showcase, I've lived in 4 countries, I speak 3 languages because that's relevant for the job. And I think that if you really pursue these opportunities that might not be traditional, you can find a lot of these skill sets that might make your resume stand out next to someone who might not have those experiences. So again, don't be afraid to showcase something that might be considered outside of the norm, especially if it connects directly with the job. So whether it's real life experience in another industry, a volunteer opportunity, or even a passion project, look at the job description and figure out how you can tailor your experiences to your resume. Are they asking for research experience? Talk about the research that you've done throughout your school experience. Are they looking for project management skills and handling pressure? Maybe you manage the full-size kitchen and learned how to delegate and manage a team. Are they looking for someone who's involved in sustainability? Talk about the different ways that you're making an impact in your community every day, but use it and tie it to specific, detailed, measurable actions. So with our last minute, you really can't see this, so I don't know what you're gonna do with this, but this is actually a former food systems minor at Berkeley, and I just wanted to share because she reached out to me in 2020 during the pandemic looking for, at the time, an internship. And I just really loved her resume because, like Andrew was saying, first of all, it's clean, it's organized between the different types of work that she's done, the leadership experience that she has, but then she also adds things that would pop out to me, like she's fluent in 2 other languages other than English. She has skills and interests that are outside of just food systems, like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the other thing that I wanted to share is that she also started at a community college, and for me, that shows that she can have a goal and work towards it.
Oh, sorry. Just need to share the screen.
Okay. She can have a goal and work towards it to get to Berkeley. And so, yes. So I just wanted to share this because she was able to get a job outside in the pandemic. And for me, I was just super impressed by the wealth of her experiences. She did a lot of different things. She also was a Haas student, so you can see some of the business type roles that she did. But I think, if anything, I really felt the breadth and depth of all the skills that she was able to communicate. Thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it.
Well, I know we're at time, but something that we want to ask at least one audience-generated question to Andrew and Youre. The question we'll ask is, what skills should I highlight if I'm in a different industry and interested in pursuing a career-related business? We'll take a couple minutes and do that.
Why don't you go first?
Okay. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yes. So the question is, what skills should I highlight if I'm in a different industry and interested in pursuing a career-related business?
Well, I think definitely demonstration of interest is number one. Like if there's anything you've done in your past that might connect to food systems, that might show that you might have some of the skills that are needed in roles like research, analytics, and even working directly in the industry. Now I know that pivoting sometimes, like I said, I pivoted. You might not have something directly from that in that world, but you might have certain skills that are applicable. So I think it just takes a little bit of digging and trying to frame and retell the things that we've done that might
Yeah, I would basically agree that, there are very few industries that are so siloed that the work you do over here doesn't have aspects of relevance over there. And so things like project management, communication skills, writing. These days, data is so pervasive, and a data set is a data set. So if you've been doing data science at Uber, and now you want to go to work for food, for Impossible Meat, then helping them understand not that you've been working on traffic flows, but that you've been utilizing Python to analyze these data sets. You're showing them the applicability and a rationale for why you're looking to shift from your current industry into this new one. You have to give them a story, a trajectory that helps them make sense of why is this person doing this? Because if it's just because you're unhappy at Twitter, well, maybe you're just not a happy camper. I don't want to bring you in. If, however, you can talk about an emergent interest in food that first started doing this, and what you've done outside of work is that you joined this food co-op and you've been a start of helping out at a food pop-up, and that's deepened your interest, and now you're ready to make that traditional, that industrial shift where you're going to bring these skills in project management, analytics into this new context. Now it makes sense to me.
And I'll just add, if you don't have any of those past experiences, start doing it, start
Right.
finding it, start putting yourself in those spaces, join clubs, join networks, professional networks, and actually get, real hand experience, volunteer. I always advocate for volunteering, but if you don't have it yet, find it, create it, build it.
It's amazing. If you close off your screens, you have a tremendous amount of time in your week when you're not working or going to class or study. And so otherwise, if you're not having these experiences that expose you to food service or food, why would you make a change without doing your homework first? In this case, the homework is volunteering or finding some other guys to sort of get in that tent, which will also then provide you with a network of people who can give you advice, who can serve to endorse you, but that's a different presentation.
Thank you so much.